Can everyone hear me? Awesome.
Yep.
How are you, Zach?
So good. How's everyone else?
Doing good.
Good. All right. I think everyone's on. Can't tell. But
Do we have video?
we're about what?
Is your video working?
I think so. Am I moving?
Oh, there you are. I have my
Okay.
screen too far shrunk.
Yeah,
I was trying to go
All
over
right.
the agenda.
for sure. I'm trying this with AirPods, so we'll see how that works.
It's a
So
good idea.
everybody in my household doesn't have to hear me scream, or anybody else scream. So, let me give me 1 second. Jake, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start if you want the recording. Perfect. Okay. So it's now 7 p.m. So I'll go ahead and call the Midvale Planning Commission meeting for April 22nd, 2020 to order. Nicole, could you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Tippett? Commissioner Snow?
Here.
Commissioner Costello? Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Benson?
Here.
And Commissioner Tippett, you're still on mute, but I see that you are here.
Okay.
And Ms. Costello, you have yours on mute as well, but I see you waving at me. So I will
That
count
works.
them as
I am
present.
unmuted.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Hey, Zach. It looks like
yes.
Colleen's having some issues.
Yeah, we've got to get her off of mute.
On the bottom left
Bottom
corner
left,
of your
yeah.
screen, there should be a mute button, a little microphone with a red line through it.
She may have to drag her mouse a little bit just to get it to pull up.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. It wasn't there.
Yeah. If you just kind of hover your mouth, move your mouse a little, it'll come up at the bottom of your screen.
Or Jake, is it possible for you to unmute her?
I think she got it.
Oh,
There you go.
Hey.
she's here.
Like I'm gonna have to come down for another lesson.
That's
impressed.
okay.
So everyone's present.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay. So just real quick, just going over meeting stuff here. We are doing this online right now due to the world going crazy. Not really. It's okay. The pandemic stuff. So we appreciate anybody that's watching or listening at home. We appreciate you taking that in consideration as we kind of work through this. This is our third go at this, so it feels starting to feel a little normal, I guess, as normal as it can. So we are streaming on the city's Facebook page, YouTube, and an audio recording on the city's website, Mixler. Yeah, on the city website. Sorry. Anyway, if you'd like to I would say if you'd like to participate in the public hearing, you'd email comments, but it looks like the public hearing item for this portion is going to be delayed. So I won't even go over that whole portion. So I'll just get straight into public hearing item number 1, which is supposed to be a large scale master plan for the Jordan Bluffs Pod C at 752 West Bingham Junction Boulevard. The applicant was Mark Garza with Holmes Homes. Alex, are you in charge of this one right now?
Yep, I'm in charge of both of them
Okay.
today. So,
Perfect.
do you want me to just run into this real quick?
Yeah, let's do it real quick.
Okay, so as you guys might recall, we originally scheduled this request for a public hearing in, I want to say it was February. And we ran into some issues in that meeting, so we pulled it at the very last minute. In this one, same kind of thing happened. We had it scheduled for a public hearing today, but we got comments back from the fire marshal that the applicant thought could be addressed pretty easily, and it turned into a bigger problem than he realized. So he's pushed it. He sent me revised plans today. So where I said in the memo that we expect it to be on May 13th, it's now confirmed for May 13th. Looks like it'll be good. So I've just requested the Planning Commission table this item until the next meeting so that we can bump it, move on, and then that does mean that no additional notices will go out because we won't really have time to send them out in advance of that meeting. But tabling it with a date specific like this means we don't have to do notices also. Any questions?
No questions. So I guess really at this point, I would just need a motion to table this item.
I'll make the motion to table.
Second,
This is Candy. I move that we table consideration of the application for a large-scale master plan for Pod C of the Jordan Bluffs area at 752 West Bingham Junction Boulevard until the meeting on May 13th, 2020, to give the applicant time to address comments from Unified Fire Authority.
this is Colleen and I second it.
Perfect. So it's been moved by Candy and seconded by Colleen. Nicole, will you take roll call, please?
Commissioner Tippett,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes,
Anderson,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Seems like so many less people. I don't know why. But that's been tabled until May 13th. So we'll come back and discuss that in a few weeks. So we'll just move right along to the discussion item, which is regarding Jordan Bluffs Pod A, concept plan for RSL Academy training facility. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, everybody see that?
Yep.
Excellent. So this is kind of exciting. This is the second time we get to go through this process. Second? Yeah. So this is a request from Adam Langford and Wasatch to put a soccer training facility for Real Salt Lake, one of their development teams or some of their development teams here on the partially on the Jordan Bluff site and partially just outside of it. So in this zone, we have a slightly different process laid out for how we review applications. And those of you that have been around for a little while will remember that we did this process change so that we could get the Planning Commission involved earlier in exchange for not requiring them to be involved later. So what we've got in front of you today is essentially a workshop concept discussion for this RSL training facility. And what we'd like is to have a good discussion with the Planning Commission, the applicant, and the applicant's design team, so that we can ensure that when the formal application for a large-scale master plan comes back in a little bit later this spring, we'll have a good project in front of you. So I'll run through this real briefly, and then I'll have the applicant chime in with anything else he wants to add. But this is a request for a large building with an indoor soccer facility, some office and team space, and then an outdoor facility, generally to be used for private use, like I mentioned, the RSL development teams. It does currently overlap the boundary between the Jordan Bluff zone and the clean industrial zone. And then it's right next to Public Works. And at this scale, would require some additional property from Public Works. So we've got a little bit of an involved process kind of laid out ahead of us. First, we have to rezone the areas outside of that Jordan Bluffs zone to get them into Jordan Bluffs. We also need to get the property from Public Works transferred over to Wasatch, and that requires an action from the Planning Commission and from the council to do that. There will need to be some zoning ordinance tweaks made for this. And just kind of at a high level view, we're looking at modifying the setback requirements along Ivy Drive to reduce them a few feet. We're going to need to update some of the general language for the zone so that it reflects the additional property, having the zone boundary come out to Main Street here instead of cutting off right about here where it does currently. We'll need to look at some additional standards for athletic fencing and lighting for the outdoor field. Generally speaking, though, we've spent a lot of time with the applicant trying to get the design something that works with the zone and works with the community. Hopefully, if there are some comments, we can get those kind of hashed out today and give the applicant some good direction on how to move forward. We do have a few, we're considering at the staff level modifying a few standards, which is allowed under the zoning ordinance. Specifically, we're looking at reducing the parking requirement. If we used the commercial recreation facility that's in the ordinance today, that would result in a requirement of over 500 stalls, which is quite excessive for a facility like this. The applicants provided a parking study that says that essentially about 100 stalls are needed, and they'll be providing 125 between the on and the off street spaces. We're also considering allowing the outdoor field to count as landscaping area. The requirement right now is 10% of the site area in landscaping. And if we don't count the field, then they're only at about 5%. And then finally, we're looking at reducing the opening requirements along Main and Ivy from 25% to 17% along Main and then 23% along Ivy. And that's needed because that's where the field is, and it's just really hard to put in more windows when there's a big soccer field right behind them. So process-wise moving forward, we anticipate this coming back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing a couple times, once in May and once in June, first for the text amendment, the disposal of that city property at Public Works and the rezone, and then second to do the large-scale master plan a little afterwards. It'll also have to go to the council, and then we'll have some staff reviews. So that said, I'll let Adam kind of take over. I saw he was here with some of his design team folks. So unless you have questions for me up front, let's hear what Adam has to say on this one too.
Yeah, let's hear from Adam first, and then we'll go to questions from us.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So just quick introduction for me, Adam Langford with Wasatch Residential Group. You probably used to seeing me in with our different multifamily projects. So we're acting as the developer. We're helping with the entitlements for the RSL group or the RSL Foundation. So I've got a whole slew of people on with me tonight. We have Craig Martin, who is with RSL. And so we got him, we've got the architect, we got the landscape architect, and we have the engineer. But I'd like to turn time over at the beginning, if that's okay, to Craig, and have him give you kind of an overview of the project and how it relates to RSL and that kind of a bigger picture from the RSL perspective.
Sure.
Hi,
Okay.
everybody. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh, it sounds like I'm a little bit loud, I guess. I'll try to be a little bit slight in my speech. My name is Craig Martin. I'm the general manager and vice president of operations for Rio Tinto Stadium with Real Salt Lake. And I also lived about 18 months of my life building the facility in Harriman, for those of you who have driven by it on Mountain View Corridor. So the purpose of this facility is a little bit different than the one in Harriman. So Harriman is a training facility that houses Real Salt Lake. It also houses, I guess for lack of a better phrase, our AAA USL team, which is the Real Monarchs. And it also houses our U19 men's team and U17 men's team. So, having those aspects of what we need taken care of, we needed some alternate facilities to I guess, do what we need from the perspective of our youth foundation and some of our development academy teams. So what we plan on doing in Midvale is our youth foundation and our girls program in the Olympic development program will be housed there, as well as the pre-development academy folks from the men's and women's U12, U13, and U14 teams. So in addition to having all of that too, of course, we have a certain amount of public use, with regard to RSL, the city and community groups. So with regard to RSL, everything I just told you falls into that. But we also certainly plan on having a certain amount of, Midvale city and local groups that will be able to use the facility, as well as some of the men's leagues and women's leagues that we might, recreationally run as well from our standpoint. So there's a myriad of different possibilities that we can do in this particular facility in order to not only be a community benefit, but also a benefit for RSL and development programs that we operate. Any particular questions on that?
No?
I think that sounds pretty straightforward. If you'd like to, Mr. Langford, is there?
I mean, I could have the architect walk you through kind of the building and the floor plan, if that's helpful. Some of the buildings, some of the space on the west side of the building. It's up to the planning commission. I can have the architect walk through the building. I can have the landscape architect kind of walk you through the corner there on Main Street and Ivy next after the architect, if that's helpful. Or if you want to go straight to questions, we can do that too.
Yeah, we let's see if there's some initial questions.
Okay.
I'll run through. Candy, do you have any questions?
Not right now, I don't.
Okay. How about Robin?
No, I think it sounds good. No.
All right. Dustin?
Oh, I'm on board. Looks great.
Colleen?
There was only one question that I had, and that was in reference to the parking. Now, from what I can gather, from the way the contractor, it came out, are they going to allow on-street parking on Ivy Street?
Yes, that's already allowed on Ivy.
That is. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I guess my question is then too, I figured that probably was allowed there, but now what if people start parking on Main Street?
I want to say, I don't know that parking's allowed there currently.
Oh, okay.
If it is allowed there, then it's a public street and people can park where they want.
Oh, okay.
If it's not allowed currently, then it'd be treated like any other illegal parking situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was my only question, but I really like the way everything looks, and I'm on board. I think it's great.
All right. Bart, do you have any questions?
I like it. I'm just kind of curious. I might be getting ahead of myself, but hours of operation in the evenings, would it be noisy for the residents in the area? That type of thing.
Not getting ahead of yourself at all. That's great. Can you address that real quick?
Yeah, so I mean, for the indoor facility, we would probably operate much like we do at some of the other facilities. Usually 11 o'clock is when we stop. Sometimes we even go till midnight, but really the only distraction would be the parking lights. In terms of the outdoor field, about 10 o'clock would be the time that we shut down operation and shut down the lights out there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And Candace, questions?
Yeah, I don't have any questions as of yet.
Okay. So I guess I have kind of a lot of questions that have to do with just kind of the building in general. I mean, from what I read, it's about 48 feet tall. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
All right.
And
So
by the
I
way,
work.
Zach, I
Go
can
ahead.
jump to any other sheet in the packet if you want me to on this screen.
Yeah. Could you go to
Elevation page.
yeah, an elevation page? That would be really helpful. Perfect.
9.
Okay, 47.9. And then do you have a total there of how long? By chance?
The architect might be able to answer that one. Maybe this is a good time for him to give you kind of a.
Yeah, let's have you go. Let's have the architect kind of go through the building a little bit.
Okay, is Adam, are you on?
Yeah,
the
I'm-
line, or CJ?
Yeah, both of us are here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yep,
Yes,
we can hear
I
you.
can.
All right. Okay, I was just trying to bring up my plan, but it is 102,000 square feet roughly. So we have about 90,000 square feet for the soccer arena portion. Then we have about 9,200 square feet for the office locker room area. I was trying to pull open my floor plan here to get you the overall dimensions. Takes a little bit longer when I'm on the Zoom meeting to populate, so.
That's all right.
We are looking at about, I don't have that in front of me right now, I apologize.
If I could chime in, my name is
Yeah.
CJ Lindbergh with Design West as well. From the facility building, the furthest point out, including the field, it's 452 feet long.
Okay, perfect.
Roughly.
Thank
452 and 2 inches. Yeah, so we would enter from the west through a central entry point with a nice canopy. Then you could you'd walk straight in through to the arena towards the east. If you head to the left on the floor plan to the top of the page, the north, that's where you'd have the team room, which would be kind of a classroom area where the teams can sit and discuss certain items pertinent to them. Then you have 4 locker rooms, and you have a weight training facility that opens up into the soccer facility as well. You have public restrooms there near the entrance. You have some concessions and an RSL store for some merchandise. And then you have to the southwest of the plan, you have the storage kind of maintenance portion that would house some of the equipment that would needed to maintain the turf field and to maintain the grass outside.
Great.
And then CJ's the main designer on the building. He can talk more directly about the exterior and kind of the overall layout as well, and the type of materials that are going on the building.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a large building, and we've done a lot of things to try to reduce the scale visually. and with color and materials, really try to look at ways that it just feels like it gets broken down and not monotonous over that long 452 feet. And what we've done on Main Street on the east facade is wrap the east facade with these corner features. And on the northeast corner, it has some, the piece in yellow is actually a digital advertising board that would be for RSL only, I believe. And they would be able to put images of things happening inside, things that have happened within the stadium at Rio Tinto, all the fun things that are going on within the facility. So for kids, adults, and the teams as well. And those are broken out with, it's a little bit more of a brick material. So there's a masonry base and then a masonry above. And then there's this prow element that creates this kind of lid or element to help when you're on the sidewalk to really shield your view and give a little bit of a shadow effect and an effect of also creating this lid to the corner elements. The building in between has masonry base and then metal panels in different colors of various tones of a neutral kind of gray or off tone in that direction. On the west facade, which is the main public facade or interaction facades, but it's mostly masonry with some metal. And then to help scale it with the building that it's kind of in front of is we butterflied the roofs on either end. So those are the single pitch roofs. And they kind of help bring the scale up and then back down towards the facility building. And as Adam mentioned, there's a really large, fairly large canopy entry. So as you're coming into the facility, you're under cover for a good dimension before you get to the front doors. Again, we've got brick there. We've got detailing in the canopies and in the parapet as well to help at this scale for people coming right up to the building. It's a really nice feature for the building. And if you notice from the site plan, there's some really wonderful landscaping there to help break up the building and the scale as well. And I'm sure our landscape designers are on the line, so I won't take away their thunder, but there are some elements to help from a approach on every approach as you're walking along it, as you're coming to the building. There's a lot of visual things to help take away the size of this structure.
All right. Let's see. Trying to decide. Do you want to? Do you have the landscape designer on? Kind of explain that a little bit as well, or?
Sure. Brandon or Nate, are you on the call here?
Yep, this is Nate with Law 64. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nate. Thank you.
Nate, do you want to share your screen, or you can have Alex, shuffle through your slides here too, either way.
Yeah, if you want to share it, I'm fine. I can stop sharing.
No, Alex, you're good. You can kind of, yeah, I can pull it up real quick.
Alex is good at sharing. He doesn't, you can share. Either way, whatever works.
Go ahead, Alex. If you want to go to the plan view, that's fine.
This one, or do you want the next one?
The first color one you were on at the beginning. Yeah. So kind of at that, at a high level, kind of yeah, right there. The northeast corner there. So we're kind of creating a public plaza to some degree, kind of at that main corner of the street, with a series of 18-inch high concrete seat walls and planters, kind of creating that space. So it's separating kind of the plaza on the corner and then kind of an inner courtyard or patio space for the building facility. And then at kind of that corner, that little red space, that red triangle is kind of going to be a sculptural element, soccer player, something like that, kind of a monument sign type of a thing right there. Beyond that, as CJ kind of mentioned, around the north and the east side is kind of a series of elongated triangles. Within that is kind of a raised planter area, so kind of a little berm or mound within those shapes with a mix, and then along the street kind of a mix of smaller evergreen trees, larger shade trees, and then kind of medium-sized street trees. And then obviously a series of regular flat turf grass areas as well. So a nice mix of different landscape elements to soften the building, create some little spaces along there, and then just be a nice look and also highlight the architecture as well.
Okay, great. So I'll just loop back around. Any commissioners have any questions yet for anyone that's talked so far?
I don't. This is Candy. I don't.
Okay. I
This is
believe
Cla-
Candace.
And I don't either.
Okay, I think I saw Candace raise her hand. I think she might have some questions.
I have a couple questions.
Perfect.
They kind of have to do with the architecture. I was mostly concerned with the east frontage. I drove by the other day, and yeah, the scale. And I know you spoke about changing the materials and the colors to kind of bring the scale down. I'm not sure it's necessarily effective with all verticals and the alternating colors. It doesn't. I think the perspective view that was included in the packet shows it a little bit differently. I know with the landscaping, it definitely changes it. But the scale is on Main Street is something that I'm still a little bit concerned about, being that it's right up against that established residential area.
Yeah, I would definitely piggyback off that. A couple things that were mentioned. It's mentioned that there's a plaza space on that northeast corner. Like what do you guys propose? Like, is that going to be programmable space? Is that what is the purpose of it?
I can speak to that a little bit, and then we'll have Nate jump in. That really started as an idea.
Could I just have you say your name for the record? Sorry. Anytime somebody speaks, if I could just have you just real quickly say your name, just so that makes Nicole's life a lot easier.
Yeah. Adam Langford with Wasatch Residential Group.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, the corner plaza idea really kind of came out of some early meetings with staff, but I think the idea was to do something a little more prominent on that corner. So yes, it's programmable in that it's for pedestrians, people walking by. I think there's also an element for teams where they can come out of the building onto maybe a grade separated area versus an area that down below that's separated where the public sidewalks would tie into. So kind of three things: public, private, but then also just a design element on the corner. Nate,
so I guess
add to that.
Yeah, let's.
I think that's a pretty good summary. This is Nate again with Law 64. And we also have a perspective further up, kind of that corner as well. I believe, but yeah, it's just kind of a design element, kind of a signal of that corner. Yeah, so kind of highlighting the corner of the building there, but a few raised planters you could sit on that outside in the plaza or on that seat wall, or a team meeting could happen on that inner, a little more private patio there.
All right. So from what I'm looking at, if I'm looking at this perspective correctly, it is, so you don't even get to a window until you're above a door. Is that correct?
That's
Any
correct.
sort. Okay.
Again, it's
So
based on the windows are placed so that down below, as people are, whether it's kids or parents or teams getting ready, they can warm up, and if they happen to kick the ball into the side, they're not kicking it directly into a window. So there are things that we've had to look at as far as how to get the amount of glazing into the project above certain standards that are typically for these types of facilities to help meet some of the needs that you would like to see because of the prominence that it does have on this corner. And
Yes, CJ, do you
yeah.
have some of those numbers? Because I know we've added a lot of windows. The percentage of glazing has gone up substantially, you know, over the various meetings we've had with staff, trying to accommodate the function of this building, which is indoor sports, and also trying to accommodate exterior and how it ties into you know, what's already built and that street corner.
And I can attest to that also. We have beat them up over the opening requirement, and
sure.
That's why I mentioned, you know, we've pushed for as many windows as we can get, and I'm sure that Adam and the others on their team have grown tired of us saying add more windows, add more windows.
Which I do appreciate that. I mean, that's great that those windows are there, but you know, my sense of my uncomfortableness is really along that east side. If you're somebody, I'm not even getting into the height of the building yet. Just the sheer 48 feet to the top there. But as you're walking and as a pedestrian down Main Street, you know, walking down a blank wall, when you're there at the pedestrian level, walking down a blank wall is really uncomfortable. You can't see in and people can't see out. That really makes you feel uncomfortable when you're walking in a space. It doesn't, I'm sure you all have heard the term eyes on the street. This is not eyes on the street. This is a blank wall staring at you. That's a real concern for me at this point. Have you all considered the idea of flipping the building entirely and having the entrance on the Main Street side?
Yeah, I don't know how we could do that with the parking. I mean, it really gets down to the function of the building.
This is CJ Lindbergh. Again, I just wanted to reiterate, there's also the easement that we have to deal with on the west side. And if we flip the building, then the field building would be actually in that easement. And we've tried to do what we can to minimize those types of things.
Yeah, Alex, do you want to show the commissioners where that interceptor trench runs?
Yeah, I just switched to it.
It's right.
So let me chime in here real quick. This is the interceptor trench for the edge of the capped area on Jordan Bluffs. So this is basically the boundary of where that Superfund site begins, and we can't build a building over the top of it because that interferes with how the trench functions. So this layout was put together to basically fill that space between the interceptor trench on the west and Main Street on the east. So there isn't really an opportunity to shift things around anymore and still have it function.
And if you look at the facility building, we actually designed the facility building to follow the angle of of the
Yeah.
interceptor so that we could maximize the usable space available for us. Typically, we'd have it as a more rectilinear without all the ins and outs, but that actually helps create some scale and some nice things along that facade. And as the west facade is the facilities and the kind of the security point for the field, the outdoor field, it's kind of a really nice place where everyone can see what's going on when they're in that zone and when they're using either the indoor or the outdoor facility.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it might be helpful also just to remind, or not remind, just discuss the point that currently this property, the barricade property, is zoned clean industrial. And so it is an industrial zone with a lot of allowed or approved industrial uses that could go in there today. So I think it is a benefit in that sense, and I think it's a great idea to pull it into the Jordan Bluff zone, but it is currently industrial.
If I may address your concerns on the scale just a little bit, this is CJ Lindbergh again, to both Zachary and to Candace. One of the things we did do is add the masonry base, and it is a taller base. It's around 6'8", so it's a person's height or a little bit taller than an average person. But when you add the raised planter beds and the angled beds that are going on that east facade, with the large trees and the smaller trees, and the way the building would catch light, because this is not a flat building material. It's got ribs in it, so it will collect shadow and do a lot of things during the day as the sun goes around the building. I think there's room for, if you're on the street and you're walking on the sidewalk, yes, it's a large building. I definitely understand that. But I think there's if you think about the different varieties of height and material and things that we're trying to do, there is going to be a nicer scale than if it was just a one material across the board. We do have windows, so when you're in the facility, you can see what's happening as far as the weather. And if it's a beautiful day, that sunlight's going to come right inside. And if you're across the street, you would be able to see, because of your vantage points, you would be able to see in through those windows and see what's going on. So there are some active opportunities with the facade, but bringing it down further down to the ground would just become a hindrance and a security issue, because if we had broken glass all the time, it wouldn't be good for players inside the building. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, very much.
It does to a point. I would. There's some other things I'd probably like to. I mean, there's other ways you could do that interior as well. So looking at if we could go to like kind of an interior floor plan, Alex.
Hold on, it's down. Up.
That's perfect. So I guess what is happening around, so I see obviously the field. What's going on at that edge then, where the wall is? What's happening there?
You mean between the field and the walls?
Yeah.
This is Adam Zetterquist with Design West. Between the field and the walls, and Adam Langford can probably, or Craig Martin can probably add to this, there's certain runoff distances needed as you exit the field where the lines are and go towards the wall. So there'll be a few people around there in that buffer zone.
So I guess to address some of that, and you'll have to forgive my ignorance here, but could there not be some sort of like half wall there, kind of like in an ice rink, where people are standing or whatever, and that would kind of help block out potential issues with broken glass and what have you.
There will be a net, a sports net that goes around the entire soccer field as well. So that will help to contain that.
Okay. So then that kind of just as somebody seeing this, one thing I would like to see in any further discussion or anything is some sort of rendering from the street level on Main Street. You know, I've seen it done multiple times where you can actually take a picture from the street and overlay your building there. Because you know, the green washing around is nice and it showcases the building really well, but that really doesn't tell me what it looks like in context to the surrounding area with existing buildings there and existing information. So I would really like to see that. I think that could that could help your case here too, at least with me.
We can take a look at that and see what we can do. I mean, to the south, we have the existing public utility buildings, the salt dome, and some of those other things that are coming down. But yeah, we can look at doing that. You know, Wasatch is the property owner to the north, and then obviously to the east, you have the single family homes, I believe, or maybe it's commercial.
It's an apartment and some undeveloped ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention one more thing too. I guess one reason for the design height of the windows was just considering the players on the interior of the building and not having that vision through to and being distracted maybe by the outside. And so that's one reason for the height of those windows. One thing to consider also is, and Eric Winters the civil engineer can probably speak to this a little bit, is we're trying to figure out the finished floor elevation of the building right now. Based on some of the information we have, it looks like the portion there along Ivy and Main will sit down a little bit. So that 6'8" level that CJ was talking about will probably actually be lower by a foot or so. So as you're walking along the sidewalk, that'll probably actually be around 5 feet or so, and then you'll have the stepped planters. So that window sill will probably be around 5 feet.
Could I have, yeah, sorry, that got really loud for a second. Could I have whoever's on, there we go, okay. Sorry, that got really loud for a minute, apologize. So, yeah, I mean, I love this idea in concept. I don't know how I feel about it in all actuality. Maybe I can go around and see if there's any more comments from other commissioners, because I've kind of taken up a lot of time here. So I'll just start jumping in. Dustin, do you have any questions, comments, concerns? You're on mute, bud.
If windows work on the west side, what prevents them from working on the east side?
I wouldn't say that. So on the west side, I believe it's like offices and interactive, and people are out there, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference, is that at least for me, you have an activity going on there. You have people coming in and coming out. Where on this other side, it in essence is a blank wall that people from the outside will be able to see the ceiling of this building, but nothing
What's the
going in.
setback from the sidewalk to the building?
I think they're proposing, the zone technically requires 30 feet. Is that right, Alex?
On Ivy right now, the setback is 30, and on Main it's 15. This design
Okay.
has a minimum minimum setback on Main of about 15 or 16, and then about 25 on Ivy. So it would require a 5-foot reduction in the Ivy setback.
Okay.
It's also, by the way, I'll point out, it's probably the only building that's going to be on the south side of Ivy between Main Street and Bingham Junction Boulevard. So that setback change wouldn't affect anything else.
What would the height be if we allowed an apartment structure in here?
Under the, let's see. So the zone that they're proposing didn't actually consider going all the way to Main Street in this location. So there's probably some discussion to be had about the appropriateness of the height right now, but it currently allows up to 80 feet along the east side of Jordan Bluffs. The clean industrial zone, I'd have to look it up, but it's fairly tall. I mean, I want to say it's right around what they're proposing on the clean industrial side, if not a little taller.
I would rather have this than apartment building at 80 feet.
I don't know that we'll get an apartment building at 80 feet anywhere, but that's the theoretical maximum.
Just to compare.
But my concern with this, though, and what I have, that has to do is about, the scale of the neighbors and the feeling on the street when you're walking. That was my main concern. Like I said, I love this idea and this use, but is this the right spot for it? Does that make sense? That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Can you guys still see my screen with the zoning ordinance on it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. So right now, this is Jordan Bluffs, the blue. This is sub-area 4. Adam can tell you how tall those units are, but it's somewhere around 3 or 4 stories. This is R25. It allows 4 stories with no cap, so 48 is not unreasonable there. Clean industrial, I can pull it up if you want me to, but I can't remember offhand. This is regional commercial, it's 55. RM25, again, 4 stories. This section in green is SF2. That's going to be the shortest, and that's going to be like 2 stories, or 25 feet-ish. So the peak will be, somewhere right around here at 48, and then the sides will be shorter, clearly.
Clean industrial is 45.
There you go, 45, right around there. Thanks, Jana.
Mhm.
I would say we try to make it up in landscaping, making it feel more comfortable with landscaping than I would fashion the building.
So one thing that a topic that could be discussed maybe at greater length here is are the tree sizes proposed going to be appropriate, or do we want to see bigger trees? And then maybe as part of this discussion, the planning commission considers requiring larger trees up front, because what this sort of rendering doesn't show is what it'll look like in a year when it's built. This shows what it'll look like in 5 or 10 years when it's filled in a bit. But that first few years that it's in there, those trees with a 2-inch or 1.5-inch caliper are going to be pretty small. So maybe there's some options or some discussion topics that could be looked at further. It did sound like the trees were specifically considered to address interior lighting. So there is that trade-off of larger trees outside means less light inside, and what's more important.
Yeah. Okay.
Larger trees do look good in the elevation.
Yeah. I'll keep going down. Candy, did you have any comments or questions?
I think the only comment I have, I like the look of the building. I'm not all that concerned with the wall per se, but I think larger trees would soften the look of that building. And when you're walking, it would also give you more of a kind of a park feel instead of walking next to an industrial building. So I think larger trees would help soften that a lot.
Okay. Let's see. Robin?
I agree with Candy. I think the taller trees would. I mean, it seems, I really like the look. I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good use right there. I think some taller trees would kind of, she's right, soften that a bit, but it's going to take a long time to get the trees in there. But I mean, I don't really object to anything on there.
Okay, great. Let's see. Colleen?
You know, I really like the look of it, and with the logistics of why they've done what they've done and the location and everything, I find that it's really good. And two, as far as the trees, some trees do grow faster than others, but I think definitely that would soften. But I really, really like the whole idea of this. And I think there's been a lot of work go into this. And as you know, Alex said that they have done a lot of work with the developer and that. So I feel comfortable with this.
Perfect.
Because they've done this before.
Yeah. Bart, do you have any questions?
Oh, just one quick comment. Maybe some type of landscape lighting might help too.
There are limits on the type of lighting that's permitted. Our current ordinance has a dark sky style ordinance to it, so uplighting isn't permitted, but maybe there are downlights that could be considered as part of that overall landscape plan.
Just for making people feel safer.
Yeah, maybe
or yeah, maybe you could do some path lighting or something along the sidewalk.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That would go a long way, I think. And Candace.
Yeah, so to kind of tag off of what Zach was saying, that northeast corner with the pavilion or where the sculpture would be. Yeah. I was a little bit confused about how it would be used since it's so far away from the curb cut for the drive entrance and also the entrance to the building. Because there's no real, like, there's only egress, there's no ingress. So that the use as far in the neighborhood, I'm not sure. It's a nice place to sit maybe, but I was just confused about it. The other concern I had was turn lanes in and out of the parking, just because it feels like if they're going to be leak times, that would be the highest use, and it could get quite congested in such a small curb cut.
Is there anyone that can address those?
I can talk about the curb cut. Adam, do you want to do the plaza space first?
Sure. There originally wasn't, if you want to flip back to that rendering that Loft 64 did. Yeah, originally there wasn't doors on this corner, but we added them for that reason. So you could exit the building and go out there. Yeah, the idea is to create something on the corner, maybe to pull people in. You could stop there. If the idea is that somebody would walk to it, right? And so that was the idea, is that you could sit here. People could come out of the building and sit here if you want to cool down or get some fresh air. That was the idea. So And not that it wouldn't be useful on the other side too, but we are trying to create something on that corner with the architecture plus the landscape. So it looks right, but it still functions. I mean, people hopefully are walking by, or they're sitting there, or they're looking at the sculpture, or they're reading about RSL. But we did add the doors. And I don't know, CJ, if you want to talk about the doors anymore.
I mean, yeah, as Adam said, we hadn't had them in the project before, and we show them. We actually show some glass on those doors, just so that, again, when if you're a participant inside the field, you can still see what's going on. If it's a break or halftime or something, and you're out enjoying the plaza. I think to Adam's point, and to Nate, I think who's going to talk a little bit is the sculpture piece is really it's an artwork for the city that happens to be on this property, for the use that's for the building. And it's more of a, I could take my picture there. As Candace mentioned, you could sit there and enjoy just being in the shade. It's just a nice give back to the city with the artwork.
Sure, and I appreciate how it affects the scale, definitely, especially since we've been talking about that east facade. So I like what it does for the facade. I was just curious about the purpose, a lot of what Zach was alluding to earlier. But thank you for the clarification.
And Eric might be able to speak to the road. It sounds like Alex might be able to talk about turn lanes.
Yeah. Eric, is Eric here?
I think he is. I think I saw him.
Yes, I'm on. This is Eric Winters with Focus Engineering.
All right, I'll let Eric answer that question then.
Yeah, so the entrance location was kind of dictated as far as where we could place it in relation to the intersections. Again, the site with the interceptor trench having its constraint on the west side of the building, and where we could place the parking lot kind of dictated where we could put the entrance location. But I'm not sure that really answers your question. What exactly was the concern with it, though?
I'm concerned about congestion at peak times, because it feels like everyone will arrive within a half an hour of each other and everyone's going to leave within a half hour of each other, and just how that's going to affect the traffic.
Yeah, so we have a traffic study, and those are all good questions. It might be good to take note of those, Commissioner, and we could have the transportation engineer come back with those. And Alex, it might be good to have maybe have Keith or somebody from the city comment on that also. I know Ivy is a collector road. I don't know about Main Street, but they are designed to hold quite a bit of traffic. But those are good questions, and it might be good to have somebody from the city staff talk about it, and then we can also, when we come back, have the transportation engineer be ready to discuss that also.
Well, I can chime in for a second.
Okay.
First, even if we assume highest number of users at once and say that there's a league going on, they're not all going to be arriving at the same time, because there's going to be multiple teams and they're not all going to be playing at once. There's only 2 fields here, so we're not going to have like 8 teams on coming and going all at the same time. So there's, from the city's perspective, I mean, we got that parking study, and those numbers look pretty good as far as the traffic counts or the parking counts are concerned. One of the things I was going to ask Adam to provide as part of the next submittal for the large scale master plan was a study that looked at really kind of the peak flow, and if there is enough room for stacking and turning movements and things. So I'll just make sure to add that note when I talk to him after this meeting. But we do have some limitations on how big those entrance points, those access points can be. And so Eric and the design team have really been required to figure out how to handle that that aspect, those design requirements as part of this. And you can see here that, you know, we've got plenty of stacking room on the inside and 3 directions people can go to leave. So hopefully it won't really be too much traffic. We do have stoplights at Ivy and at Bingham Junction, or Main Street and Bingham Junction. So there is control for how traffic will move through there.
And we did move the access point too. It
Yeah.
was further to the east, so we lined that up with Sagini Drive.
Which will help reduce the conflicts.
Yeah.
Alex, I have a quick question. How far is so like, do you know what the distance is between Sagini Drive and Bingham Junction? Just out of curiosity.
Well, how long is the building? That can tell us.
About 1,400 feet.
That's to Maine, right?
Yeah. So it's about half that.
Okay. So one question I also wanted to ask kind of the commissioners, fellow commissioners, how do you guys feel about the kind of the digital sign right there on that corner of Main and Ivy? Do you think it'd be more appropriate facing towards like Bingham Junction Boulevard area where we have that kind of higher increased traffic and utilization, where Main Street is really the whole purpose of Bingham Junction Boulevard, right, was to take traffic and kind of slow down Main Street a little bit. So I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on that signage there too.
This is Candy. My concern about the digital signing is I'm pretty close to a digital sign at Murray Park, and I can tell you I'm glad I don't live closer to it because it would drive me absolutely crazy. So I'm a little concerned that this may be right across the street from residential. That's going to be troublesome. The digital sign at the park is so bright and it changes all the time, so it's very distracting. So I would be a little bit concerned about what's going to be on that sign and how often it's going to change, and if it's going to go off at a certain time so that it's not on all night. So those are my concerns about the digital sign.
Anyone else want to?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is Colleen. This is
Okay.
Colleen. I don't have a problem where it's at, but I too wonder, if they could have like the lighting and that at the soccer fields, they have a cutoff time at 10. If something like the digital sign could be cut off at a reasonable hour so as not to, distract any of the neighbors across the way.
Hey,
But
it's Craig Martin with RSL. If I could add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure, please.
So we have multiple facilities with digital signage. The law states that after a certain period of time at night, and it's usually either on a photo cell or something that's timed. It's along the lines of sundown, where signs have to go to a level of under 400 nits, which is a unit of light measurement. There are plenty of signs throughout the valley that do not follow that law very well, but we certainly do. A very good example would be the marquee that Rio Tinto Stadium has on I-15, and also the 2 signs that we have on Mountain View Corridor. We also have in those development agreements with regard to both of those facilities that those signs go on at 6 a.m. and they go off at 10:30 every evening. Actually, I'm sorry, the one on I-15 is perpetual because that's allowed by UDOT and Sandy City, but the ones on Mountain View Corridor and the ones that we operate at other locations throughout the valley do go off at 10:30. So we would certainly be in line with the light level measurement and also with the time schedule measurement. And oftentimes those are also left up to development agreement negotiations. So we would certainly be willing to follow whatever law that would be deemed appropriate between both of us.
Oh, okay.
So on the sign topic, I'm going to just jump in because there's a pause. If we interpret this ordinance the same way that we've interpreted it everywhere else in the city right now, and this type of digital sign would not be permitted. And it's something that Adam brought up recently in the discussions about what we do to change it. That's something that we're still contemplating internally how we want to address and proceed. So my expectation is that will be, if it's something that we look to change to allow in the future, then it will come as part of the text amendment that will be necessary for the rest of this project. Adam has given us the language that they use in Draper for similar signage. So we've been talking about that between me and Matt and Nate about what we want to do. So we'll have to wrap that conversation up real quick and then try and figure out what to do to move forward.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
I was just going to say, yeah, with electronic signage, especially on some of our other retail projects, it makes sense to condense all the different tenants into one digital sign, and everybody gets, so many seconds or minutes throughout the day. But when we put that together with Draper City, there's regulations in there from how many pixels and the brightness and the hours that they're on, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can get into the details and control that.
Again, it's Craig Martin from RSL. So there are also some other details that we've dealt with in the past with regard to on-premise and off-premise signage. Certainly, when you look at off-premise signage, they're operated more like a billboard, whereas this one would not only be an on-premise sign, it would actually be attached to the building. So the only thing that would be on that sign would be related to Real Salt Lake, our camps, our sister companies, some of the large dollar sponsors that we have in our repertoire. So it would not be, which are not many. So my point being is it would not be operated like a true billboard. So hopefully that would be a bit of a mitigating circumstance for not only you, but the neighbors surrounding the facility.
Sure. Any other commissioners have any thoughts, questions?
I was just hoping it wasn't going to be the Kenny Rogers chicken sign.
I'm a Seinfeld fan myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Rogers.
I just needed a little levity for a minute.
There you go. That's awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm sure we'll
All
just
right.
get it taken care of. It seemed to be, I mean, if it's not allowed, then we need to see what is and so forth.
Right.
So we'll get it taken care of, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's definitely something to consider, because right now what they could do is cover 15% of that wall area in static signs, non-changeable signs, which is a pretty large amount of area. So
quite a bit.
There, maybe we should look at tweaking it anyway. But
yeah. Candace, I think you had.
Yeah,
I saw your hand kind of go up.
Yeah, it was just a thought after hearing some of the other commissioners about where the primary, like where most of the traffic is going to be passing the building, and whether that would be at the entrance where parking and all of that is going on, whether the west side of the building is a more appropriate place for an electronic sign.
So I
But
switched.
I'm not sure where the primary traffic and whether you're focusing pedestrian or just bicycle or vehicular. So I guess that's part of the study.
I'll point out the sign right now would be around here somewhere, Main and Ivy. If you put it on the west side, it'd be somewhere around here, which really isn't going to be terribly visible to people.
Right.
I mean, pretty much the only people you'd catch are those that are stopped at the light on the left onto Ivy. And there, I don't anticipate that that will be a very highly trafficked route beyond the people that live in one of the projects around, live or are traveling to one of the projects right here.
Okay.
Either the traffic will go on Main or it will go on Bingham Junction. If it goes on Main, then they see it. If they go on Bingham Junction, then they really don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for
All
that.
right. Yeah, that explains it a little bit as well. So thank you. Any other general questions for the applicant or Alex at this time? Anyone?
Something that might be helpful is if you have any other documents or renderings or information that you want to have the applicant submit as part of that large scale master plan. I've taken a few notes based on the conversations, and I'll talk to Adam about tweaking some of these drawings to incorporate those later. But if there's anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be helpful in the deliberation in front of the public, then now would be the time to ask for it. But I will point out that there's not a whole lot of time available to turn things around. The large scale master plan submittals due in a couple of weeks. So we are a little bit crunched by time.
Okay. I don't really have anything else. I mean, I kind of expressed and talked everyone's ear off, so I don't really think I have a lot of anything else to add if any other commissioners do.
No.
All right.
Okay.
I think we're set then, Alex.
Yes, that is all.
Okay. So I guess we just move on. Do we need? Were there any minutes in this pack in this one? I don't. Okay. I'm seeing Nicole Shaker. Okay.
No.
Perfect.
We hope to have those done for you next time.
Okay.
When Leslie left, there were a few last minute changes to make, and it's been a really hectic time with people being out sick and such. So we're working on getting them back to you as soon as we can.
Okay. Then we'll just move on to staff. I don't remember what you call it. Staff update.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So as far as meetings are concerned, next month right now, we only have scheduled the regular meeting on May 13th. The council scheduled 2 regular meetings the week before and after, if you're interested. On the 13th, hold on to your butts, because we've got 12 items on that agenda.
Why, Alex? Why?
Can we start at 5?
I was going to actually ask if you were interested in starting a little earlier, because the bylaws allow us to hold it as a special meeting instead of a regular meeting if we want to change the start time. So on that agenda right now, I can just kind of give you a brief summary of the applications we've received. We've got that large scale master plan that we tabled earlier, which that application has already come before the Planning Commission once in an earlier form. So this is a revision to that one that doubles the number of units and changes the building types, but keeps a lot of the layout pretty similar and includes a lot of the comments from the last round. So I'm hoping that it doesn't, it's not too dramatic of a discussion. After that, we've got a handful of kind of run-of-the-mill conditional use permits and master plan developments to look at. We do have a subdivision and vacation that is next to the park, which I think we brought to the Planning Commission several months ago. And that one I anticipate might have some vocal comments or some loud comments incorporated. We've got another large scale master plan for a project on 80th South that the Planning Commission heard an earlier version of back in November. And then we've got the groundwork for this RSL project that includes a text amendment, 2 rezones, and a surplus declaration. And then we've also got another discussion like this one for the Zion's office campus on Jordan Bluffs. So there's a lot going on, and unfortunately, they all need to happen on the 13th. So we can start earlier. We can try and streamline our presentations at the staff level if you'd like. I'm not really sure how the public comment's going to go in that meeting, because several of those projects I expect to have a lot of people wanting to comment. So either we're going to get a lot of emails, or we're going to have a lot of people calling in pretty angry, is what could happen there. But yeah, it's looking to be intense. Right now, I don't have any plans to do a special meeting later in May. So we do have the option of, if we go, well, the bylaws say if we go to 10:30, then the Planning Commission votes to automatically table everything to the next meeting. Hopefully we don't have to go that late. But,
yeah.
But
is there anybody? Sorry, Alex. I was just gonna throw out there. Does anybody have any objection? Can anybody not meet early on the 13th?
Are we gonna, when's the anticipated time to be in the building for our meetings?
I think we might find out more about that tomorrow. We've got an all staff meeting scheduled tomorrow afternoon, and Kane was talking with the council last night about starting to make the transition back into the office building, and talking to us about how that's going to play out this week. So I don't know that we'll be back. We might be back by that meeting, but if things go the way that they have, I'm thinking it'll probably be the June meeting before we're for sure back in the building. But I mean, I can send everybody an email tomorrow afternoon or Monday morning.
That'd be nice. Yeah. I think we do better with our public meetings when we are presented with the people and not just questions. It's really hard to, I don't know, for me it is anyway.
And that's actually a complaint that I've been seeing pretty much across the whole valley. We've been keeping an eye on how other cities are doing their meetings, and we're like right in the middle of how people are taking comments. Some cities are saying you have to send in your comments before the meeting starts, so they don't really get an opportunity to listen to presentations or discussion. They have to have it in advance. Other cities are providing call-in numbers or letting people attend the Zoom meetings. Basically, it's letting whoever they want attend the Zoom meetings. And we looked into doing that early on in this process, and it was decided that that was really not going to work out super well. There were security concerns and other things involved in that discussion.
I would think that room's big enough that we can have the social distancing that we need anyway, isn't it?
Well, that depends. If we have kind of the usual crowd show up, then probably we could space the commission out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But if we have had meetings in the past where there have been too many people around to actually have that distance.
Well, we can limit. If you're only there for the one project, then you're the only one in the room. They don't have to be to all the projects. And that would be the solution for stopping that, right?
Well, usually when we get a lot of people showing up, they're showing up for one project. So
okay. All right.
That one, yeah. There's a couple of applications on that meeting that I think will have a lot of folks wanting to comment on. So Janet and I will be making sure to talk to everybody in advance, letting them know that, we do have these options to watch and listen live, but because of the way the council has directed us to handle these meetings, we've got to take the comments electronically unless
Right.
they had to open it up and have us in the building again. I mean, we're not even in the building right now, as you can see. So
Right.
I've been there twice in the past 2 weeks, and there's been like 3 people in the whole building.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, let's get an update tomorrow after your kind of all hands meeting.
Okay.
And then we can I wouldn't mind starting earlier, especially for something as large as this. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. We need to have that decision kind of made tonight, whether we're going to start earlier or not, because our notices will have to be amended to account for the time difference. They all right now go out at saying 7 o'clock. So we'd have to make sure to fix that on all of the notices for each of these items.
I think either way we have to start early.
What?
I think either way we're going to have to start early just because we have so many items. So,
so we could say we'll start at 6 if everybody can be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other option is if you wanted to start even earlier, we could order this in such a way that the public hearing portion wouldn't start until 6, but maybe we get out some of the other discussion and action items in advance. I'm less enamored with that idea. I'd rather just say we're starting at 6. So if you're going to attend at 6. And
yeah, I think that's probably best because
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do it as a special meeting for 6 o'clock. Make sure all of our notices are updated to stay for that. And then the bylaws won't change, so that'll give us 4.5 hours to get through these. And
but can we have snacks?
Has it ever stopped you, Ken?
Well, no.
Okay, then. Can we do it? Can we put the agenda so that like we get something out of the way first and then be pleasantly surprised by the end?
So that has been my task for this afternoon, is trying to figure out how to order things on the agenda. The challenge is I have several items that absolutely have to be heard that day and cannot be delayed. So
Right.
if I put those first, they also happen to be the ones that
Okay. Is there anybody we can bar from coming to this? I just have one person in mind. That's all.
I'll do what I can.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna work on finishing that agenda up. We actually got four applications in the second half of today, and today was the deadline for that meeting. So
wow,
way longer than I was expecting it to. But they also all were like, either we get on that agenda or the project doesn't happen. So it's like, all right. If it gets tabled because it takes too long, then that's a risk that they have to take.
Okay, 6 o'clock.
All right, so put that on your calendars, and I'll talk to IT and do the noticing to show that. I'm gonna fix it right while I'm thinking about it.
Hey, Adam or Alex, I hate to interrupt. I just thought ask a quick question. So a part of our presentation, I apologize. We're one of the longer ones that's going to be on the next meeting, so I apologize in advance. But
Mark, do you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Sorry, yeah. Mark with the Gardner Company. I apologize. Sorry for the long hair.
We're with you.
I don't know where you get a haircut. And we have WRNS who is going to be doing some presenting. They're pretty amazing. We're excited about them. They're part of the Zion's team that's come forward. they're out of New York and San Francisco. The main guy who's going to be presenting is in New York. And I was just wondering, Alex, if there was any chance we could let him go kind of in the beginning so it's not midnight by the time he wraps up. So just a thought, that was all.
Well, that is a good thought. Let me respond to it in this way. I can do that, but we probably won't be able to have as in-depth of a discussion as we had tonight if we do that. Because we spent an hour on RSL there, and if we spend an hour on Zions, then we're going to run out of time for everybody else. But Zions is one of the ones that has to be done that night. So
we appreciate that. Whatever works. I just thought I'd bring it up since you guys were talking schedule. We really appreciate your time.
So let me, for the commissioners, let me ask you this. In other jurisdictions that I've observed, they don't have their staff present. They say, basically, you have the staff report. Do you have any questions about what's in the staff report? Which would shave off a fair amount of time in this process. Is that something you might be willing to consider for that meeting? Maybe we just, everything goes in the staff report and then you can ask us questions afterwards and we can respond to clear anything up that's unclear, but then we can shave off maybe half of the time allotted to each of those items and move through them quicker.
I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it, but a lot of times it's, I don't mean this as a dig to anybody else, but I'm kind of steeped in this stuff all the time. So when I read them, I kind of understand everything that's going on. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels though.
This is Candy. My only concern is people watching and wanting to make comments. I think it's important that the staff maybe condense it down a little bit if you can, but I think it's important for those participating that they get to hear from the staff, because not everyone's going to understand the staff report that they're available. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, this is Colleen, and I agree with that. You know, if you could condense just a little bit, you know, so that everyone would understand, I think that would be great.
Okay. That is a good, happy middle ground. So we'll work on making sure we do concise presentations, and then we can hit the big points, and then we'll also still have the applicants there available to explain additional things too. So whether we do a full, a half, or no presentation at the staff level, we'll always have the applicant there to talk about it. But we'll work on it, and that's something that I've been wanting to kind of explore a bit more as we look at these. One of the projects that Leslie and I have been working on for the last year or so is trying to figure out how to reduce the number of items that the Planning Commission hears that really don't have a huge impact on the running of the city. I mean, we get a lot of conditional use permits that don't really, they're permitted uses essentially that the Planning Commission just has to approve. And they're things that we could approve at the staff level and save everybody, you know, a month of time and a few $100 in application fees. So that's another thing that Nate and I will be working on in the future, obviously after all this epidemic business is over with and things get a little normal.
So Alex, this is Robin. If you say the staff has looked at this and this is how the staff feels about it, why can't we just say, great, we agree with the staff? I mean, you guys have done all the work. And
well, I mean, you do that already, usually.
Well, sort of.
Well, I should say on the types of applications where we're considering making this change, it usually is we present it to you, everybody goes, we have no questions or comments, and then it gets approved. And we spend between 15 minutes and half an hour for each item just talking about something that didn't really need to go to a public meeting.
Right, right.
If we take it to a staff approval, then there's no public meeting, there's no notice, there's no 3 to 4 week delay to wait for the public meeting to be scheduled. So we can get businesses in sooner, we can get applications done faster, And really, we can take some of the risk in improper decisions out of the hands of the planning commission. That's part of our overall ordinance rewrite that we've been trying to work on for a while.
We'll get it done, would you?
I'm trying. I've got 12 things on the agenda next month, so it's a little stretched. Okay, that's all I had for you tonight. Do you have any questions for me? Questions, comments, concerns, things you want me to look into?
No.
Okay.
All right. Well, then I would just take a motion to adjourn then.
I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:34. This is Candy.
All right. Any objections?
This is Colleen. I second it.
Perfect. Any objections? Thumbs up, everyone?
Yep.
Hey, there we go. Okay. Then we are adjourned. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
guys so much.
Good night.
Have a great night. See ya.
See ya.